We like to think of ourselves as pretty evolved creatures, right? That we're driven by love and reason. But what if one of our most powerful, most primal driving forces is the pleasure we get from hating? It's a shocking idea, I know, but it comes from this surprisingly modern essay written way back in 1826 by a guy named William Hazlitt. And honestly, it might just explain more about our world today than we're comfortable admitting.
Okay, so let's just jump right into the deep end here. Hazlitt doesn't waste any time. He hits us with this incredible, totally counterintuitive statement. He's not saying hatred is just some passive, negative emotion we should all try to avoid. No, he saw it as an active force, a spring, a source of energy that literally pushes us to think and to act.
And this is the central puzzle of his entire essay. I mean, it just feels wrong, doesn't it? How can an emotion that we know is so destructive, so corrosive, also feel good? How can it be a pleasure? That's the really uncomfortable question Hazlitt dared to ask, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So, to even begin to understand this paradox, we have to start where Hazlitt does. We have to explore how on earth hate could feel less like a poison and more like a powerful shot of adrenaline. Now, let's be clear. Hazlitt was not trying to make excuses for hatred. He was trying to get under the hood and understand it. For him, it wasn't just some character flaw you could just wish away. He saw it as this natural, if, very dangerous, part of our psychological makeup, an impulse that seems to be baked right into the human experience.
So how does this so-called energy actually work? Well, Hazlitt basically identified three key ways that hatred gives us this strange and, let's be honest, sometimes seductive sense of vitality and purpose.
First up, there's just pure emotional energy. Think about it. When you feel apathy or boredom, you feel stagnant, you feel stuck. But hatred, oh man, hatred demands your attention. It's like a powerful fuel, giving you this super sharp sense of purpose and pushing you to do something instead of just sitting there.
Next, and this is a big one, hatred can be a shortcut to building your own identity. I mean, sometimes the clearest way to define who you are is to scream about what you are not. Hating an idea or a trend or some group, it can be a really powerful way to draw a line in the sand and declare, "This is me, I stand here."
And third, there's that simple, raw feeling of cathartic release. Hazlitt pointed out that we don't just hate people. We can hate things, we can hate bad ideas, we can hate traffic. And the act of just venting that hostility gives you this temporary but oh so satisfying psychological release valve.
So let's just recap the so-called pleasures of hating. It gives us a jolt of emotional energy, it helps us carve out who we are, and it offers this incredible release. These are the seductive benefits that Hazlitt saw. But that is only half the story.
Because for every single ounce of that energy it provides, hatred extracts a really, really heavy price. And this is where Hazlitt's analysis takes a much darker, much more cautionary turn.
So now we have to look at the corrosion of hate, the destructive consequences that Hazlitt was just as clear-eyed about. We have to talk about how this powerful emotion ultimately rusts and decays everything it touches. Hazlitt wrote about something that modern psychology might call emotional entropy, this kind of natural tendency for our positive feelings to just decay over time. He saw how even the most intense friendships can sour and curdle into dislike, and how things we once absolutely loved can become sources of bitter, bitter resentment. He also perfectly described a phenomenon we now have a very specific word for: schadenfreude. That dark little thrill you get from watching someone else fail. Hazlitt saw it in the crowds of his day, who seemed to take a grim pleasure in watching things like public fires. It's that really unsettling satisfaction we sometimes feel when we see someone else's misfortune.
And this corrosive effect, it doesn't just stay personal. It scales up to entire groups. Hazlitt noticed how nations often define themselves by having a common enemy. It's the classic us versus them playbook. Hatred is an incredibly powerful glue for building in-group solidarity. But the catch is, it only works by creating and demonizing an out-group. And here we are at the most crucial point, the bottom line. While that pleasure of hating might feel real and energizing in the moment, Hazlitt's ultimate warning is crystal clear. When you let it run wild, when it's left unchecked, it is a one-way street to cruelty and dehumanization. It eats away at our empathy, and, at the end of the day, it just leads to despair.
Okay, so this was all written 200 years ago. Why does it feel like he could be describing our Twitter feeds today? Why is it so relevant? And how do we solve this core paradox?
that the same emotion can feel both so energizing and so destructive.
This slide right here really shows you why his work is so timeless. Just look at these parallels. It's stunning. What Hazlitt figured out just by observing people, modern psychology has since given fancy names to. His vital force, we call that negative motivation. His identity through opposition, that's ego formation. His collective hostility, that's a textbook case of in-group versus out-group psychology. The man was so far ahead of his time. It's absolutely remarkable.
At the end of the day, the real power of Hazlitt's essay is that he doesn't just wag his finger and condemn hatred. He tries to understand it as this fundamental, double-edged sword that's part of our nature. Yeah, it can energize and define us, but it will also isolate and corrode us. It is both a part of us and a profound danger to us. And that leaves us with one final, and I think really vital question. If Hazlitt is right, if this incredibly powerful and dangerous emotion is just an inescapable part of being human, then the challenge for all of us isn't to pretend it doesn't exist. The real challenge is to figure out how we master it before it masters us.